What the actual Welcome to From Center Ice. My name is Courtney, and it sure feels a lot like Toronto Maple Leafs playoff time, doesn't it? Of course, I just watched Game 1 between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning in the 2023 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Round 1 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs, even a rematch of last season's matchup between these two teams. That series went to Game 7 with Tampa Bay winning, and the final game, of course, they went on to the Stanley Cup final, but that time they did not win the cup. They lost to the Colorado Avalanche. Thank goodness. But that was last year, and this is this year, and the Leafs and Lightning are up against each other once again, and I am here to talk about game number 1. But I don't even know how to talk about this game. If you've been around the channel, you know that usually when I do a game recap, I'll go goal by goal, talk about how the game progressed. But I'm just gonna tell you right now, this game ended with the Tampa Bay Lightning beating the Toronto Maple Leafs by a score of 7-3. And I don't even think the goals were the interesting part of this game. That is 10 goals. And with everything else that went on, I don't even know if they are worth talking about. Except the one that I will die on the hill was definitely not a goal. Not that it even mattered at that point, because the Maple Leafs were still losing and they still would have lost had that goal been called back. The one I am referring to, of course, was Corey Perry's goal in the second period when Samsonov pinned the puck up against the inside of the post. They called it a goal on the ice, so you would have to have video evidence in order to overturn that, or to confirm it, which they said they did. But I have not seen an angle of that puck in the net, quote unquote, that would confirm that call. I have seen the image where it looks like it's all white there, but to me, that is snow on the red line. Sure, maybe the puck is past the red line there and it would be in the white paint, but you can't see any red on the left side of Samsonov's skate and pad, and it just looks like it disappears, so you can tell that there's snow on the line there. So there's no way to really tell if that puck is fully across the line. Granted, maybe the league does have a better angle of that puck, so they were able to make that call, but until I see that better angle, I will die on the hill that that should not have been a goal. And what followed that was even worse. Because that goal was scored while the Leafs were attempting to kill off a major penalty. See, I don't even know where to start with this game because we didn't talk about how they got a major penalty, which led to the goal, which led to what happened after the goal. But again, talking about this game in any sort of order doesn't even seem to be the logical way to go about it because none of it was good, none of it made sense, and so it's all just floating around all messed up in my brain. I mean, if you are a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, I'm sure it was great for you, sort of. The outcome was certainly preferable, but you did lose 3 players, 2 of them being big-time players in Victor Hedman and Erik Cernak. And I'm not really sure what happened to Victor Hedman, but the hit on Erik Cernak that took him out of the game was what led to the major penalty. So I guess this does all come full circle eventually. Michael Bunting put a hit on Erik Cernak in front of the net but away from the play. And in attempting to give the player the benefit of the doubt here, it didn't seem like Bunting was trying to hit Cernak's head. He wasn't even looking at him when he laid the hit or hit/reverse hit on him. Cernak was kind of bent over and they were both looking toward the play. But Bunting did hit him in the head. It was direct head contact, so I agree that that should be a major penalty. I've said it on this channel before, I think that all hits to the head should be an automatic major. So I am not in disagreement with that call. It did kind of make me upset when it happened because it didn't seem overly vicious vicious. And again, while I agree that all hits to the head should be an automatic 5-minute major, there is no consistency with these penalty calls, and that's the part that upsets me most. If the officials were to call this consistently, then yes, fine. But we all know that they don't, so Bunting getting a 5-minute major there seemed to be a bit much for what the play actually was. But I say that in also not excusing him for doing it. So it doesn't really make much sense when you try to explain it that way, because I agree that the hit was bad by Bunting. Maybe I should just say it this way. We all have seen a lot worse that got a lot less punishment. And that doesn't mean that I think that Bunting should have received less punishment. I believe the other hits should get more punishment, but that's just what makes it so frustrating, is that there's no consistency. And I know when people talk about officiating, especially in the playoffs, a lot of it really does come down to consistency, and there not being any of that. We'll see if Bunting gets suspended for any games after that. It really wouldn't surprise me, and it would be warranted. It was a stupid hit away from the play, it caused an injury, and it was just completely unnecessary, and a hit that you want to be taken out of the game. So to put a nice little bow on that, I think Bunting was in the wrong. I also don't think that he intended for the outcome to be as bad as it was, just watching the play a few times. But he was in the wrong. He deserved the 5-minute major. He also got a match penalty, so he was kicked out of the game. Maybe that's a bit excessive, but if we are trying to get rid of hits to the head, then it makes sense. Again, that all comes back to consistency. But anyhow, the Leafs were killing this 5-minute major. Corey Perry scores this quote-unquote goal, which I don't think was a goal, but it was called a goal on the ice, and I guess they didn't have video evidence to overturn this. Sheldon Keefe, the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, not being happy with this goal being scored, decided to challenge it for goaltender interference. What? I didn't see any goalie interference on the initial play. Did you see any goaltender interference on the initial play? I know they say that maybe Samsonov's pad was pushed, and you can't push the puck into the net with a goaltender's pad. I understand all of this, but I don't think there was any goaltender interference on that play, and the officials didn't either, because after Sheldon Keefe challenged it, they came back with the ruling that there was no goaltender interference on the play. So while the Leafs are killing this 5-minute major, they then have to go down 2 players, and the Tampa Bay Lightning get a 2-minute 5-on-3. And if there is anything that you should not do in the game of hockey, especially in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, it is give the Tampa Bay Lightning, a very recent back-to-back Stanley Cup champion team, a full 2-minute 2-man advantage on the power play. And what happened? Brayden Point scored. So not only did Corey Perry's goal put the Toronto Maple Leafs down by a score of 5-2, Sheldon Keefe decides to somehow take this goal away because they're convinced it is an actual goal, even though I'm just going to say that it wasn't. But you don't do that by challenging for something that is not there, especially while you are already killing a penalty. So Brayden Point scores, they go down by a score of 6-2, and that is at the very end of the second period. So they have to go into the intermission, knowing all of this happened, somehow try to come out in the third period and not allow any more goals and score 4 to tie it, not to mention the fact they haven't been able to get offense going all game. That seems like a completely impossible task, especially when your goaltender has been really bad. That last Brayden Point goal that I talked about that came at the end of the second period to make them go down 6-2. Yeah, it was just a simple backhander toward the net that just went through Ilya Samsonov. Just went through him. No big deal. So what did the Leafs do? 1 period too late, they decide to take Samsonov out of the net and put in rookie netminder Joseph Woll and just see how it goes. I mean, clearly at that point, it couldn't go any worse for the Maple Leafs. Unfortunately, Ross Colton did score about 7 minutes into the third period, but to give Joseph Woll some credit there, it was on a breakaway. That was the only goal he allowed, but Tampa also only got 5 shots in the third period, which was kind of a miracle, seeing as they outshot the Maple Leafs 15-10 in the first period and 14-10 in the second period. But then the Leafs somehow outshot them 11-5 in the third, one of those shots resulting in a Järnkrok goal just over 8 minutes into the third period, but that goal made it 7-3. And if you are down 7-3 facing Andrei Vasilevskiy in the playoffs, I don't think you're coming back in that game. Granted, this is hockey and strange things happen nightly, but just going off of past experience, especially with the Leafs and especially with Andrei Vasilevskiy, that's just not gonna happen. I mean, you could have told me at the end of the first period when the Leafs were down 3-0 that they would not come back and win this game, and I would have totally believed you. I did not think at the end of the first period that the Leafs were going to come back and win this game. They did try. In the second period, they scored 2 power play goals, one from Ryan O'Reilly, one from William Nylander. That made it 3-2. So Toronto was only down by 1 goal. And then out of nowhere, here come the officials, and they just want to call a penalty on Toronto, apparently, because David Kampf goes off for a mystery slashing call. Yeah, his stick hit one of the Lightning's sticks, but if that's a slash, then every shift, there should be a slashing call on the ice. And that wasn't even the worst penalty call of the game. Also in the second period, and shortly after Ryan O'Reilly had scored the first goal of the game for the Leafs, Luke Schenn gets called for a cross-check. So I went to the NHL rulebook and looked up Rule 59.1, which is a cross-checking penalty. And it says, a cross-check is the action of using the shaft of the stick between the 2 hands to forcefully check an opponent. That is from the NHL rulebook. So what happened on this play with Luke Schenn? Well, he had one hand on his stick, and his stick was down toward the ice, and he shoved the Lightning player with his arm. That is not a cross-check. It's simply just not a cross-check by what the NHL rulebook says. Do you want to call him for something else? Maybe interference since he didn't have the puck? Sure, maybe. But again, if that's a penalty, that should be called literally every shift of a hockey game. So in the second period, we have 2 phantom penalty calls on the Leafs shortly after they had scored a power play goal. The Leafs killed off that first one against Luke Schenn, but they did not kill off the bogus slashing penalty against David Kampf, and Braden Point got his first of the game, that coming before the backhander that just went through Samsonov. Do you see why it was so hard to figure out how to talk about this game? Because talking about it in chronological order just does not do it justice. But I am also not going to sit here and blame the Leafs' loss on anything other than the Maple Leafs play on the ice. Yeah, they got absolutely jobbed by the officials in this one. But that's not why they lost this game. And I don't think there were really that many penalties that should have been called on Tampa that went uncalled, so it's not because of that either. In the first period, it seemed like it was simply the case of the Toronto Maple Leafs and their chronic issue of not being able to start a game on time. They had nothing going offensively in that first period. There were turnovers galore. They were just letting the Lightning come at them, just shift after shift after shift. And it's like they encouraged it. They would get out to the neutral zone and then turn the puck over, so then Tampa would do what you try to do in a hockey game and skate into the offensive zone and try to score a goal, which they did 3 times in the first period. So, okay, you escape the first period finally. It's finally over that horrible 20 minutes. You're down 3-0. there's still 40 minutes left. And if there's anything the Toronto Maple Leafs can do, it is score goals. So while going down 3-0 is typically not recommended, especially in the playoffs, especially against Andrei Vasilevskiy, it's not insurmountable. Difficult, yes. Impossible, no. So they come out in the second, and they score the first 2 goals of the second period on power play, like I said. But then you have the phantom slashing call, Braden Point scores, and then you have Michael Bunting going fully rogue and having his dirty hit on Eric Chernak, which leads to the major penalty and Corey Perry, quote-unquote, scoring his non-goal, which was technically called a goal on the score sheet. Then Sheldon Keefe tries to challenge it for a mysterious goaltender interference penalty, which also we can't really blame him for, because what is goaltender interference? I don't know. You don't know. He doesn't know. The NHL doesn't know. The players don't know. But if there was one thing I was about 97% confident in, is that there was no goaltender interference on that play. So then they give the Tampa Bay Lightning the full 2-minute 2-man advantage on the power play. Braden Point scores again with the backhander that just slips through Ilya Samsonov. The Maple Leafs go into the second intermission down 6-2. Not great. It's hard to score 4 goals in a period. Again, in the playoffs, again, against Andrei Vasilevskiy, but you do still have 20 minutes of game time to try to do that. Crazier things have happened. And even though they did outshoot the Lightning in the third period, 11-5, like I said, they still came out not looking like they were trying to do anything. The Lightning came into this game looking like they were playing a Stanley Cup playoff game. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they came into this one looking like it was a game of, I don't even know, roller hockey in grade school? I think even the American Hockey League's San Diego Gulls could have beat the Leafs tonight with the effort they put in. So the blame for this loss does not lie on the officiating. It doesn't lie with Tampa Bay playing dirty, because they really didn't. The blame for this loss is solely on the backs of the Toronto Maple Leafs players and their coaching staff, who could not get them ready for Game 1 of the first round of the playoffs, which they have failed to make it out of too many consecutive times in a row for me to even try to do the math in my head to say the number of years. And I know rational brain and rational people out there will say, Courtney, it is only Game 1. But how many times with the Toronto Maple Leafs do we have to go through it's only one game before it becomes a big problem? Could the Leafs come out in Game 2 and completely dominate and tie up this series 1-1? Absolutely. I'm not gonna sit here and say they're just going to get completely swept by Tampa Bay and look terrible in every single game. Now, it could happen, and I don't think anybody would really be surprised at this point if it were to happen. It's not probable, but it is possible. But other than being able to get on the score sheet on the power play, there was nothing from this game that they can take and build off of to try to take into the second game. And you only have a limited amount of games to try to get it together and beat this team 4 times to progress to the next round. It's not like the first game of an 82-game season where you can just be terrible, but then you can make it up in the months to come. You have at most 7 games to win 4 of those. And putting yourself behind by 1 game isn't the end of the world, but putting yourself behind 1 game while coming out lacking any sort of fire or emotion or energy, or even looking like you really care to be there. What kind of positives are the players supposed to take from that? What kind of positive messages are the coaching staff supposed to bring to their players from that? What kind of confidence is that's supposed to give Leafs Nation, who will be at Scotiabank Arena for Game 2, it doesn't give them any. The Leafs were being booed off the ice at the end of the first period, and they deserved it. So this Game 1 was not the end of the world, but if they don't turn it around in Game 2, this is going to be a short series. Maple Leafs are gonna lose in 7 games like they always do. Yeah, they come out again like this in game number 2, they could lose in 4 games. Again, not probable, but possible. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but there are only so many times that you can be disappointed by the same team and remain optimistic or even have any sort of hope. So I'm going to try to maintain some semblance of that for game 2, because again, it is a 7-game series. And it's only been 1 game, but this is the Toronto Maple Leafs we are talking about. Anyhow, this is probably very long, but I guess I had a lot of things to say about this game, and I'm sure you do too, so let me know how you felt about Game 1 down in the comments. And if you would like to hear more from me or from Center Ice, you can head on over to FromCenterIce.com. There's links to all the places you could find us over there, or there are links down in the description for you if you would like to follow along on social media. I will be live tweeting the games over on Twitter. It can get a little chaotic sometimes, but we do tend to have fun, except tonight when it was just misery. All of that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, even the Tampa Bay Lightning fans. So while you're here, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, go ahead and do that. Give this video a like, because that would make me so very happy, and we all know that I need that after what the Leafs did tonight. But that's going to do it for me in this video. It was only game 1. I have to try to get myself back together so we can go into game 2 with a fresh perspective or something like that. So get some rest, drink some water, get ready for game number 2, and I will catch you all in the next video. Bye guys.